my compadre, my friend from NBC Sports, right here on NBC Sports on Peacock. His Football Morning in America column every Monday is must-read material, including this Monday. He is Peter King. How are you, Peter?
Rich, how's it going with you?
I am better for talking to you because it's draft month, Peter. I'm so excited. This is so exciting. I know that, number one is not much of a question, and number two is the Jets. So there's always going to be a question until we actually hear it, and then when we hear it, we'll wonder if that was the right move. And then what the Niners did at 3, I'm very excited about this draft, Peter. What do you think? Well,
I think one of the reasons you should be excited is that, I think there's 3 storylines right at the top. I had a coach tell me last week, he said, I've never seen quarterbacks get pushed up the board as aggressively as they're getting pushed up the board this year, where there's a real legitimate chance that the top 4 picks are quarterbacks. And as another GM told me that other than Trevor Lawrence, at least on their board, after Trevor Lawrence, there are 6 players before any other quarterback comes into play, and yet it could well be that the top 4 picks could be quarterbacks this year. That means, like, if you're the New York Giants, you might get potentially a great tackle just drop into your lap at number 11. Or if you're the Dallas Cowboys, who really need to start rebuilding that offensive line. I mean, they have a lot of needs. But there are just so many interesting possibilities based on the quality and the caliber of players that are going to drop. And then I think the last thing is, what's the team right now? Is it Carolina at 8? Is it New England at 15? Or is it somebody else that I'm not even thinking of, maybe Chicago at 20? What team is going to perhaps irrationally move up to try to get, say, the 5th quarterback? Or, if they're in love with the 4th quarterback, whoever it is, move up and maybe pay too much. I mean, Rich, the question is, and you're Mr. Jet, what happens if, and look, we've all said it looks like Kyle Wilson's going number 2. And I do believe that is by far it has the best chance of happening. So what happens if they keep Sam Darnold and they trade and get Carolina's 1 they trade down to 8 and they get Carolina's 1 in 22 and 1 in 23. And they have Sam Darnold for 1 more year, and they then put off their quarterback choice until next year or the year after. I think hey, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but the Jets really intrigue me in this draft.
Well, the whole reason why I would think that the Jets wouldn't trade down, if this is true, is that the 49ers either A, offered the same thing to the Jets and they turned it down, or remarkably did not even knock on the Jets' door, potentially because...
Rich, I think they did knock on the Jets' door, and I think Joe Douglas, as I wrote a couple of weeks ago, said that we're not trading the pick. And so if that is true, if that's true, then the Jets are going to sit there and they're going to pick somebody. I doubt they're going to sit at 2 and take Kyle Pitts. Even though if Sam Darnold stayed, I bet he'd be pretty happy to have Kyle Pitts on his team.
Well, if Sam Darnold stayed, they wouldn't be choosing 2nd overall either, right? Because it would have been much better worked out.
Unless,
right,
Rich, what happens if they trade down and somehow, some way? Because look, I'm not saying it's probable or anything, but if you trade to 8, one of those receivers or Kyle Pitts is going to be sitting there, and maybe 2. So you never know what might happen.
Yeah, I don't know, Peter. It's just, again, when you see the wide receivers in this league who have been so successful, from DK Metcalf to Justin Jefferson to Tyreek Hill, and how they're none of them are top 15, like to actually sit here and stick with the quarterback that could be very talented, still in Sam Darnold, because he's been unfairly evaluated. There's no two ways about that. But to bring in a new regime and tell them you need to evaluate this kid too. After that would make a third different regime evaluating Sam Darnold, as opposed to just starting the clock fresh, which we all know contractually what that means in terms of salary cap. And then you I don't see sticking with Sam Darnold being a viable option for a team that just doesn't want to keep choosing, top 3, top 4, or hope that the first rounders that they get are at the top of the draft. It's time to actually start hitting the win it now button, don't you think?
Yeah,
Peter?
I agree, but Rich, if you trade Sam Darnold and you pick Zach Wilson, you're not winning big this year. You're still building. And so, you made a great point about receivers. Does anybody remember that just 4 years ago, the 5th, 7th, and 9th picks in the draft were Corey Davis, Mike Williams, and John Ross?
There you go.
John Ross is already a washout. Mike Williams is good. He's not a big star. Corey Davis
it's on the Jets.
Is pretty good, and now he's a Jet. So, again, I could not agree with you more, because last year I thought, when I look back on the draft last year, the best pick in the draft was Justin Jefferson being picked number 22. And, so to me, I think the wide receiver classes now are so good, so deep, that if you can get Chase Claypool at, I think he was 49, if you can get, Tyler Johnson, I think, is going to be a really good player for the Bucs. He's a 5th-round pick. And it isn't just last year. It's obviously the year before. After pick number 50, A.J. Brown, D.K. Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. I look at wide receivers today like I look at running backs. You can get one down the line.
Peter King here on the Rich Eisen Show. What are the Niners doing at 3? What did they do to get up there? For who? They must have somebody in mind. Clearly, they're not going to evaluate everybody not named Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson just cause, right? They must have actually identified
Rich,
someone.
I honestly take John Lynch at his word when he says that we haven't decided firmly who we're taking at number 3. But we now know that we can get a quarterback who we can build around for the future, because we like
all 3,
a couple of quarterbacks.
Okay. So
the other point I would make, and I wrote about this today in my column, is that I really don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going anywhere. In part because if you're a team and you wanted to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, do you want to trade for a guy who's missed 23 games in the last 3 years and who makes $24 million, and you really don't know if he can stay healthy, and they want a 1 for him? Do you really want to do that? I don't. I want to wait until March when Jimmy Garoppolo just might, I doubt it, but might be on the street, And so I would much rather keep Garoppolo if I'm the 49ers, and I think they will. And Garoppolo goes into camp as the starter, and he's got an apprentice who maybe he's not going to actually tutor and help the way a Josh McCown would, but he's going to have a guy trailing him, and whether it's Mac Jones or Trey Lance or whoever it is, Justin Fields, we'll see. But I think the 49ers, if I had to guess right now, I'd guess they would take Mac Jones there. But that's all it is right now. And I think I believe when they made this trade, they did not know for sure. They might have feelings about which one they wanted if Zach Wilson goes to. But I think that is still a TBD.
No, I know Jed York loves his management team, and why not, right? And Kyle Shanahan, clearly has an idea about his system and who would work well in it. But I know if I'm Jed, I'm like, so you want to trade all that for just still evaluating? Like, hey, you sure we're good with everybody?
But Rich, isn't it possible that John Lynch could have asked Kyle Shanahan this question? All right, Kyle, Trevor Lawrence is out. Zach Wilson probably is out.
Right.
I want to know, of the other three quarterbacks, or however many there are, who could go very high in this draft, is there somebody here who absolutely categorically you would want to be your quarterback for the next 10 years? And Kyle Shanahan, I would bet, looked him in the eye and said yes, without any question. Why does he have to pick him right now? If he's looked at the tape and he wants to study, let's say, Trey Lance a little bit more because he's only played one game in the last 400 days. But again, I don't think it's ridiculous at all. I think the one thing, though, if you're the 49ers, you have looked at this thing and you realize that without a full-time quarterback, a Garoppolo or better starter in the 4 seasons, you've had one really good year, and the other 3 years you've won 6, and 4 games. So, I think it would be foolhardy, honestly, to trade Garoppolo, unless, of course, they got a ridiculous offer, which I don't think they'll get.
Peter King here on the Rich Eisen Show. Another item in your column was about Justin Fields, and it's entirely. Everyone went crazy over the throw that Zach Wilson made in his pro day. Fields had some remarkable throws, athletic ability on display at his pro day. Runs a 4.4 40. What is going on with him? It's entirely possible that that's the guy that Shanahan's identified too. Wouldn't you say?
It could be. I don't know, but he is the guy who you hear might drop a little bit. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. What if Justin Fields is sitting there, let's say, at 9 or 10? Do the Patriots say, look, let's stop fooling around and trade up to 10 or 11 and just get Justin Fields, even if it costs us next year's one? I have no idea. Maybe Chicago would offer more than that, if they'd be willing to go down to 20. I don't know. But anyway, I guess my overarching point about Justin Fields is, I wrote about Dan Orlovsky. I got great regard for Dan Orlovsky. I think he's really, really good analyst, and I just think he went too far with his comments last week. But I will say this. I don't know how you question the desire of a guy who last year became the point man for all players in the Big Ten.
To play.
Got all these players to sign a petition for Kevin Winston that they wanted the season to go on safely. And I don't know how you question a guy's desire when he takes as big a hit as he might ever take the rest of his football career, misses one snap against Clemson, beats Trevor Lawrence, and throws 4 touchdown passes the rest of the way. So again, you hear some things around draft time every year. Some things you just have to say, I don't care if this is a guy I trust. I just simply don't buy it. And I am not buying that Trevor Lawrence has got some questionable desire or whatever to be great.
Yeah, to me, Justin Fields has got a tremendous amount of upside, and I don't know if it's an Ohio State thing because the last guy that came out of Ohio State, and Dwayne Haskins, had some issues in the pros, and it's just again though the whole conversation you hear from evaluators and from what you're hearing and what have you have no idea sometimes if that's somebody maybe in the middle of the draft who's trying to get someone to drop, and then they become, attached at the hip for years to come, and the player doesn't know that the team did that.
I'm negative about that, Rich.
What is it?
Because if I am calling someone, asking them for an opinion on it, and let's say Team X is picking 17th, and the coach or scout or GM for Team X says, hey, I'm going to plant with as many as my buddies in the media as I can that this guy is lazy and he doesn't work and all that stuff. And then Team X then picks Justin Fields. Let me just ask you this. would any of those guys who he planted that with, would they trust him about anything from here on out? I know I wouldn't. So I know that that's a popular conspiracy theorist tool, saying that it's a smokescreen just to get you guys to downgrade him. I've not found that to be as common, and I'm not saying it never happens, but I'm not finding that is as common as some people think it is.
But I mean, you know, I've been around some combines this year. We didn't have one, so there's been less of it, Peter. I mean, you hear it from scouts who might not even have a say in the room. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
So I'd understand that from an actual grocery shopper saying that stuff. I wouldn't trust that person again either. But you hear agents, you hear all sorts of garbage, and that's why you rarely hear an analyst say what Dan said publicly. Because, you know, again, I don't want to source anything or anything like that, but I guess we'll find out down the road here. But Justin Fields is he's not going to have a very long night in Cleveland, Ohio. I don't think at all. That would be a shocker to me.
I wouldn't think so.
Right.
But I do think this, Rich. Every year, you know, don't you think this year? And I just talked to Mel Kiper for my podcast this week, and one of the things I said to him is, don't you think this year, as much as ever, that the quarterbacks are getting pushed up the board?
Yeah, why is
and
that?
Some potentially really great players obviously are getting pushed down the board.
Right.
So that's why I think this draft is really going to be a lot of fun, because what if Kyle Pitts, who some people think might be the best tight end to ever come out in the draft, what if he gets picked 10th or 11th or 12th? I'm not saying he will. I doubt he will. He might get picked 3rd or 4th, or 4th maybe. But some things are going to happen in this draft that I think are going to, because everybody is just obsessed with the draft now. I think some things are going to happen in this draft that'll take your breath away.
I can't wait, Peter King. I can't wait. Before I let you go, Peter, we're having a debate here on the show. Would you rather, if you knew your team was going to lose, the team you're rooting for, whether it is your alma mater, Ohio, or it's the Red Sox or anything like that, and a team that you're emotionally invested in, if you knew that they were going to lose, would you rather lose like Houston did over the weekend and getting blown out by Baylor, or would you rather lose like UCLA, where you were in it, you had a chance to knock off potentially the eventual champion and prevent that champion from being undefeated and
Absolutely.
Get gutted?
You don't have to even have to finish the question. Absolutely, like UCLA. And I'll just tell you a quick story. The last field hockey game my daughter Mary Beth played in New Jersey, they were in the state semifinals. They were really, really good. And they lost right at the end of the game. And they went farther than anybody thought. And they lost a heartbreaking game. And that night, she's home, she's crying, and she's so sad. And I just said to her, hey, Mary Beth, listen, you know, all of your friends, so many of your friends are sitting at home. They're on the computer. They're living their life. They're fine. They're happy, whatever. And you are in agony right now. But you know what you had? You had incredibly great moments with this team in the playoffs this year, in the state playoffs. Plus, you know, you've had it this way for 4 years playing this sport that you love. So, I mean, aren't you happy that you had those experiences? And it's like, if I'm a UCLA fan, I mean, we were down by double digits in the second half to Michigan State in a play-in game. We lost 4 straight before the tournament. We weren't positive we were getting in the tournament. And then we have all these incredible games and play these overtime games and win. That is what sports is about. I know your heart is broken today after getting that shot that beat you, but what a game. What an incredible game, and what a performance you guys put on. I absolutely would rather lose in an agonizing fashion.
Peter, appreciate that.
Peter, Aaron Boone, brother. Like, come on. You don't want to get ripped out.
That's a little bit of a different story.
No, it's not. It's the same. It's the same.
He's saying it's the
same.
No, the reason that that's a different story is that whole playoff thing with Grady Little and Pedro. That just pissed me off.
No, but his point is, would you rather just be down 10-0 in the first and you don't have any of that forevermore? That's what he's wondering.
But look, the Red Sox lost that year because they were horrendously managed. Okay. And so hey, look, that night I was just angry. I didn't, if it was 11-0 or if it's the Aaron Boone walk-off, I mean, I don't care. I just was so angry about what happened. So anyway.
Despondent Peter King sends us out the door. Thanks for the call, Peter. Appreciate it. We'll chat
All right,
soon.
guys. See you later.
There's Peter King. He made my point and your point, too. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.